As Bruce said, we're talking about program delivery. And this is really what we have found to be the challenge for many organizations is that the same issues over and over again. They're unclear on why the program works and what it is that they're doing that actually gets the results. They haven't really understood what makes their program effective. Each person has internalized it differently and does it differently. So the challenge when you're inducting new staff is to say, okay, how do we do what we do? What are the core essence of the program that we need to deliver? This is particularly relevant when you do things like trainings. And you have various facilitators. You've given them the content, but how they actually present that may be different depending on each person. They just take it on in a different way. Another challenge we find very prevalent is that every time you talk to a new donor, they want something different. And so you're crafting these sort of bespoke projects to meet the needs of the particular donor without really understanding what it is that you're offering. They come to you and say, can you do this? And you say yes, and you create it without really seeing what is your uniqueness within that. And so you end up with lots of disconnected activities, people doing various bits and pieces, and it doesn't really form together to say, what is us, who are we as a core? What is it that we bring to the world? Why do we exist? What is the center of it all? And so you may find that you end up dealing with crises because you have staff going off sort of gung-ho and doing what they think is required without having sort of standard procedures and ways of operating that really clarify exactly what it is that they should be doing. So the sense often is that you feel like you're herding chickens, trying to make sure that nothing gets lost. It's incredibly frustrating and can lead to huge confusion, where we found people complaining about being exhausted just from trying to juggle so many balls. They're losing track of what they're trying to achieve in the end. What is it that drives you? What is the purpose? What is your motivation? Because you're ending up focusing too much on the little bits and pieces of doing without seeing what is the core center of that all. So that's kind of what we're going to talk to you about today, because those are some of the challenges that we've seen. I'm sure you can all relate to at least one of those. So this is who we are. I'm Michelle Davidson. As you can tell, I'm the pretty one. I've worked in the nonprofit sector for almost 2 decades to improve strategy, governance, sustainability, and financial management. I sit on several nonprofit boards so that I can ensure good governance, strategic oversight, and financial controls. I like to say that my superpower is the ability to create structure and order from complexity and chaos. I'm a strategy engineer who's able to engage with the strategic big picture, but also detailed enough to operationalize that strategy. So Bruce is the handsome one, and he is a master story engineer. He's helping people from both the nonprofit world as well as entrepreneur sector to script, tell, and live their own story. Bruce is a professional speaker and business coach and has authored a range of books on the subject of personal and business story development. His superpower is the ability to understand big picture concepts and make adjustments at the small details to improve performance and productivity. So that's a little bit about us as individuals, and we both work for EM Solutions, which is a consulting firm, and we say to your strategic think tank, because strategy really starts with you as an organization, and you as a team should be engaging with it, and we can be the support to that team. We provide consulting, coaching, accompaniment of processes, and advisory to both businesses and nonprofit sector. Our specific focus is on sustainability and funding diversification through income generation and through innovative income generation development, building a business within your organization. So that's our speciality, but today we are focusing on program development. So how we support our clients depending on what it is that they require. And this is really where we see the value of having an external partner, an external participant in your process, so that we are able to create accountability for taking the time to stop, reflect, and plan. Really, that's a big one. Setting up a regular meeting with a client just helps them to find that time to just pause and really reflect and think beyond the crises of the moment. We're able to inspire creativity and innovation. I really don't know how Bruce does it because I'm not the particularly creative one, but in every conversation he's already sparking lots of ideas of things that can be tackled. So we really are able as a team to bring that level of creativity so that it can then spark your own thinking around that. We're also good at consolidating ideas, bringing cohesion amongst a team, particularly when you're working as a group, and then clarifying, okay, where are we going? What is the way forward for this? Providing insights. As I mentioned earlier, I have 20 years of experience in the nonprofit sector, so there's a huge amount of experience and exposure to various organizations that I can bring to the process and to the conversation. And then we realize that not everybody is good at everything. And so we're able to fill some of those competency gaps, particularly writing things and creating models and templates and sort of just pulling into that last stage where everybody's got these great ideas and then nothing happens because nobody's taken the time to actually document it and move it forward. So we're able to support the organization in that way as well. So when we work with clients, we always ask them to complete a 10-question self-assessment first to gauge how they measure up to the ideal. To understand how much strategic thinking is incorporated into their organization and where the challenging areas are. So at the end of the presentation, I will share with you a simplified version of our assessment so that you can calculate your strategy score. You can also download the full assessment from that same page if you want to look at it. It's also only 10 questions. But there are more comprehensive questions, so you can take a moment to look at that as well if you would find that useful. So we'll get to that at the end of the presentation. Let's talk about program delivery. So the first thing to consider is your program delivery respectful. And I see a lot of Facebook posts where people are saying, I'm starting this organization, or I see this need and I want to start this organization. And so much of it is well-meaning and well-intentioned. But nobody's really asked the people that you are wanting to help, what do they actually need? What is it that they really would value from this support that you're able to provide? So the question is, are we being respectful to the beneficiaries in the way that we deliver the program? The sort of terminology is beneficiary-led. Are your programs beneficiary-led, where you're getting feedback and you're incorporating that information into your programs? So you really are addressing the real need and not what you consider to be the need. Do you have clear processes, routines for listening to feedback? Do you gather feedback from people on your programs and on your delivery, and then make conscious choices around how to adjust to engage with that feedback? Do you consider all your participants and stakeholders in the process? And I know that COVID has raised huge challenges for a lot of people in terms of the realities of the people they work with. One of my organizations does training into Africa. And so historically they get on a plane and they would fly to now I've gone blank, Uganda's one of the countries I work in, and they would hold a 20-person training, but they can't. So they've had to adjust. But some of the realities of their participants are the data costs and power outages and all of these things. So how is your program delivery compensating and taking into account the realities and the challenges of the participants that you are actually engaging with? So that's the first question I have to you. Have you considered how respectful your program delivery is? The second question is responsibility. And this is also something that I think people don't really stop and consider as much, but we are being forced to consider it when it comes to the POPIA Act. POPIA is the act that hopefully you've had some education on over the last little while. That has become relevant in our lives because we're carrying confidential information. So we'll carry beneficiary information, we'll carry donor information. We are holding that information, and are we being careful with it? Are we considering the implications of that confidential information? Another client of mine works with people around the world who recognize themselves as LGBTQ+, and their information is incredibly confidential because in a lot of countries it is illegal to be gay, and in fact they could end up being arrested and have all sorts of real consequences if their status is, or their sexual orientation is made available to the outside public. So this organization has to be very careful about its social media and what it posts and how it promotes itself and what it says and doesn't say in the public spectre, what photos it posts, because if they're not responsible with that information, it has tangible impacts on the people that they work with. Another one is to consider the environment. Okay, you say, well, we recycle in the office. How else are you really being considerate of not just the natural environment, but the space that you work in, and how you are being responsible for ensuring that when you utilize a space, you leave it the way you found it? How do you improve the environment? How much do people want you to come back because you've actually improved the space you're in rather than left it in a way that is disrespectful? So being responsible with the money is another one that you should consider as well. The next point is being routine, in your program delivery being routine. Do you try to provide the program in the same way each time? So one of the main things that donors would want to see is your impact and how what you have done has created that impact. So if you do it one way sometimes and another way a different time, and every instance is different, you can't quantifiably say, when we do X, we get Y result. There's not that conscious link between them because you don't actually know which one of the ways you did it really works best. So consistency in program delivery ensures that you are able to monitor and track and quantify what is the key elements of the program delivery that actually create the change that you're looking for. So it's quite important that there is that core side of things that you are replicating. Obviously, there are going to be some extraneous factors when it comes to situational delivery that are going to change depending on the circumstances. But how much of it is absolutely critical that it has to be done in a certain way? How do you define that? Does everybody know what that is? So in order for them to know that, documentation is key. Having a standard operating procedures manual, having checklists, having procedures, having forms, having things like that that really show people exactly step by step how to do the work that you're supposed to be doing. And then it's also about quality. If you have a big team, you would want your team to be providing the service and the program delivery the same regardless of who it is that is actually doing the work in that particular instance. You don't want any of your beneficiaries or participants or stakeholders to get an inferior support because somebody is cutting corners and not doing it the way that they should do. So if you have a clear routine of this is how things should be, you're able to monitor performance against that and to adjust and to support people who are not currently providing the same quality of support to your beneficiaries. Excuse me. Then fourthly, is your program delivery reported? So, I didn't mention right up front, I should have mentioned, I was very pleased with myself at how I managed to make all of these things tie up with R's. So Bruce is the one who always does alliteration for everything and is amazing at finding words that fit the alliteration. And I was super chuffed when I found out that I had got 5 R's. So please notice that, and then hopefully they'll be easier to remember this way. So the fourth one is reported. Are you tracking the key metrics of your program delivery? Do you know what they are? Do you know, it's one thing to say, well, we do so many workshops, we have so many kids. Those are the quantities of stuff, but how do you track if it's actually having the impact that it's supposed to have? Is it doing what it's supposed to do? Is it making the change that you want to see? All nonprofits exist to create some change in the world we live in some way, whether that be at a legislative level or an individual child's full belly. There's always a change that we want to see in the world. And so what are the key things that you need to monitor in order to know if you are actually making a difference, and how many of those and what that is? And then, so that's the quantifiable. Those are nice numbers, they're tangible things. But also just as important are the stories. And last month, we actually had a whole workshop on storytelling that Bruce led for us. Because the stories from your participants, the stories from people engaged with your organization will really make a difference to understanding how great you are. You know, you have to be really visible in some way, and these sort of stories really help to promote yourself to donors, promote yourself to the individuals, social network. What do you say when you're putting stuff out? You know, the posting and things like that, the publishing. So the stories are key, but you can't find that, okay, we've got to do a social media campaign now and quickly make up some stories. Collecting the stories in a routine, respectful, responsible way on an ongoing basis means that you have that repertoire of current stories that you can reference when you need to. And then lastly, in terms of reported, is the narrative reporting. Are you writing up the successes and the challenges in your program delivery? A client of mine has actually now got influence into the US government strategy on HIV because they have consistently written up the learnings that they have gathered from their participants when they have been engaging across the world. And they've written up this document of what they've discovered and how it has been a success in their programs. And that document has then been circulated at the highest levels now, which is a huge success for them. So we really do want to commend them. But how are you using this successes and the stories and that to further people's awareness of your organization and what you're doing? not just once a year write a report for DSD just so that you can tick a box and be compliant. It's greater than that. How do you celebrate those successes? How do you document it for historical reference? So that's definitely something worth thinking about when it comes to reporting your program delivery. And my last R is reviewed. So it's all very fine and well. Typically, we have some kind of M&E system in there where you're tracking the number of kids in the workshops and the bits and pieces that you're doing and the engagements, and you've got some numbers in there. But how often do you step back and review what you've done? Is there a standard process? A lot of clients, particularly those who work in communities where they have staff going out to the various communities, and you find most of the staff are not in the office at their computers because they're out engaging with people, have a once a month or once a quarter what they call home days, where everybody gathers back at home, which is normally the office, and there's a reflection process to say what so far over the month has been working well, what experiences have we had, what lessons have we learned that can be shared. Because you'll find that one person will have learned a lesson around program delivery in their circumstances. And unless there's a regular opportunity, a structured official process for them to share that with the rest of the team, you'll lose that lesson if that person leaves or the circumstances change and others don't benefit from it. So it's really important to have a routine process for stepping back and reviewing and looking at what you're doing and how you're doing it. And it's not always so much the what you're doing, but how. So workshop is actually a really good example, because you will have content that you are producing and that you are presenting to people. And so you will want to say, okay, have we transferred that content? Yes, no, maybe. All right. So that is looking at, is the content good? Is the content something that adds value? Does it impact people the way we want it to? That's the content of what you're doing. But the how is, how do you actually facilitate those meetings? What space do you give within that content for people to reflect? Do you work more in groups or do you work individually? Do you do it in more of a lecture style? How often do you have the tea break? Was the tea break too late or too early? Were people struggling? Should you have done that section? Oh, this one is never do finance after lunch. A number of financial workshops I've done, after lunch, nobody hears anything because you're all trying not to fall asleep. So the timing of your content presentation, all of these things are a metadata review of how you are doing the service delivery, not just what is being delivered. So when you step back and review, it should be both. What are you delivering and how are you delivering it? And how do those things need to be adjusted? And having a clear way for making improvements, communicating those improvements throughout the organization so that everybody knows this is the way that we should be doing things going forward. And making sure you're actually having that desired impact. Sometimes it's helpful to have an external review, an external evaluation by a consultant who can then get source information from people and find out, are you actually achieving what you think you are? Are you getting the full picture? Are you having the desired impact? And that evaluation report is a valuable piece of evidence that can be then provided to donors to say, look, we are doing what we say we do, and this is how effective it is being. So those evaluations can really give you some evidence there. And so all of that reporting adds to that, and then reviewing allows you the opportunity to sit back and make decisions around it so that it is not just wasted. And finally, I just want to kind of put out there my idea of a successful organization. This is what we're aiming for. This is kind of the ideal, which is a lifetime journey to get there, of a financially stable organization that is able to effectively communicate tangible impact based on a proven theory of change delivered through innovative project design that incorporates effective measurement and evaluation for continuous improvement, so that you're no longer herding chickens. You have a proven theory of change that is delivered innovatively. Everybody is on the same page. There's clear communication. You have a team pulling together where in the same direction. Everybody has a clear idea of what they are doing and why they are doing it and how to do it consistently. Activities happen almost automatically and routines make sure nothing is forgotten. The programs are actually what the beneficiaries need and they make a real difference. Those are the things that we would want to see in your program delivery, so that it is less frustrating, less exhausting, and that you can periodically stop and celebrate the achievements that you have made, the successes that you have had, and the impact that you're having on the world that we live in today. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a idea of things to look for program delivery. I'm going to hand back to Bruce now just to give you an idea of a next step and to share that self-assessment with you.
We have an NPO self-assessment for you, and you can find it on our website, emsolutions.co.za, NPO strategies. Or you can just grab your phone and scan that QR code and it'll take you straight there. So what that does, it'll ask you just to complete the form on the right-hand side of the page, and that'll take you through to the assessment. The assessment are 10 easy questions, yes and no, and then there's a evaluation of your score. But there at the top of that page, you'll also see there's a downloadable PDF, which is a 3-page, more in-depth, kind of a scratch deeper under the hood type assessment that asks the same question but in more detail, and it's a good one to do with your management team or with your board. So if you're interested to see how you measure up and how you kind of not measure up against anybody else, but literally yourself, then please go and play with that one. And then let us know what your score is. And if you've got any stuff that you're struggling with, or you're going to go, no, question 3 and 7 made no sense to us, please help us with that. We are here and available to do that.